Последняя перед кофе-брейком презентация будет сделана Наджи Маулана и Мугиц на тему «Роль молодого ученого в эпоху геномики». Но, насколько я понимаю, это продолжение и расширение вчерашней темы про геномику в животноводстве. So it's my pleasure to invite Naji Maulana Mugitz to talk about genomics in animal science, in fact, and some vision on young scientists' role in the genomic era. And this is also our Austrian guest, so it's quite interesting to see the vision from Europe on this side.
Okay, thank you for a very welcoming introduction, sorry. My name is Maulana Naji, so I'm a PhD student in University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences, Vienna. And yeah, I'm very glad that I'm being invited in this conference. And as you see, my status now is a PhD student, which is somehow, you know, like under all the respective speakers that we have been seen in these last 3 days. So, okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. Maybe as you can see, in animal science we call it as physical appearance of the animal, but now it's in human. Let's say so now. I'm a little bit different with the countries that represent in this discussion. So either Russian or the European. So I don't look like any of these countries. So basically, I'm coming from Indonesia. Yeah, maybe, of course, some of you know, but maybe some not. So Indonesia is a country lies in the equator, and we are an archipelagos countries which have 17,000 islands. So basically, when I arrive in Sochi and in the evening, I smell like the vapor of the salty waters. It's just bringing me back to my hometown, you know, because like it's like 5 minutes away from my home. And we have the pointer doesn't work. Okay, so in the right pictures we have a primate which called bekaka. So it's a long-nosed monkey, and it's one of the endemic species from the Borneo Island. So the biggest island in Indonesia. And it's not only these primates or only this species, but we have a lot of biodiversities. So Indonesia is considered as one of the highest countries of biodiversities. So it's around 20% of biodiversities lies in Indonesia, whether it's underwater or on the land. We have the triangle coral, which is really rich in the species of corals and also the fishes. And here's the picture of food that we have, and it's kind of architects or buildings that we have in Indonesia. This is a place of worship for Hinduism. So the Hinduism that we have in Indonesia is pretty different with Hinduism that we have in India, and this is their temples. And lastly, it's the picture of girl. Unfortunately, she's not my girlfriend, but this is how it's look like if the wedding is. So this is how, yeah, the costumes of the wedding. So I came to Austria about 3 years ago in 2019, and I got funded from the Ernst Mach grant from Austrian Agency for Education Internationalization. And yeah, I joined the group of Professor Strockner since then. So my PhD project was about utilizing the whole genome sequence data of cattle breeds. So it's various cattle breeds of Bos indicus and Bos taurus. So Bos taurus as prominent breeds in mostly northern hemisphere, so it's linked to high productivity traits and better developments and so on, while the Bos indicus is more related or more prominent with its traits of robustness, whether it's the robustness to disease, to ticks, and so on. So for the first phase of my PhD project, I was working for the investigation of ancestral alleles in Bovinae subfamily. Why the ancestral alleles are important? Because in some selection signature tools, which is like the umbrella project of my PhD, it requires the information of these ancestral allele states. And this is similar to the one that they do in human, which in human for the HD18, 18 or 19, the latest one I forgot, but they have already this ancestral allele states. And what we have in cattle, it's been released the latest reference genome in 2020, and we want to fill this gap. So the next researchers who are interested in population genomics can use our data sets for the analysis. And then apart from this reference genome that I just mentioned, which is built from the Bos taurus, there's also the reference genomes built from the Bos indicus breed. So it's developed or it's assembled by colleagues in Australia. But the thing is, this Bos indicus breed, which they define, is actually coming from Brahman breed. So Brahman breed is it's renowned for its admixture history in cattle. So 70, 80 years ago, it was a crosses between Bos indicus and Bos taurus. So the reason why they built different reference genomes, of course, to mitigate the possible reference bias and when the calling variants and so on. So this is what they expect to do for creating a new reference genomes. But then as the history told, we want to flex where in these reference genomes are actually a Bos taurus. So the next researchers who are interested to use this indicus reference genome, they will know that this is possibly the regions that might cause a little bit hard to interpret and so on. And then for the last work, which is still running now, we apply the selection signature tools, various analysis for the Austrian Fleckvieh breed, the Simmental, and 14 Chinese breeds. So because like of these selection signature tools, they use different methods for their statistical calculations, whether it's the singletons or the linkage disequilibrium or the haplotype homozygosity and so on. So I was looking for the definition of young scientist, but I couldn't find it to be exact. So I think this is the closest definition that I could find, that the one that mentioned by the Euraxis, a job portal in EU. So it's stated that early stage researcher as a researchers in the first 4 years or full-time equivalent of their research activity, including the period of research training. So by these definitions, I could define maybe, so the first categories is the PhD students, exactly where I am right now in my status. And then the early postdoc, so 0 to 3 years after the PhD student's time. And then the experienced young postdoc, it's where they have postdoc experience 3 to 9 years after the PhDs. But today, as I mentioned that I'm still a PhD student, so I will not talk from the view of the 2 or the 3rd group. Instead, I will talk from the point of view of the first group as the PhD students. So this is at least what I felt or what my colleagues felt when we are talking or sharing this, the stories or how our research is progressing. So basically, the young scientists, the PhD students, are the ones who are in charge in day-to-day activities of the research. We are really having control, or like we are basically driving the daily activities of the research. Depends on the lab, of course. It can be like settling the equipments and then like making the logs of the trials, equipments and so on. And also like what statistical methods to be applied, what is the pros and cons of different tools, and which parameters to be applied and so on. So really the details of everything. But we need the supervisors, of course, because they have more experience. They have a view, the paradigm where the research is supposed to be going. So they guide us how to get there and how to reach there. And of course, if we got stuck or something, then we come back to the supervisors. And in omics study, what we felt that we have to know, or what our colleagues and mine also experience that we have to know a lot of tools, and this is necessary. And these tools mostly can be the one that being released or it's already established by a big consortium or something, but most of the times we need our own custom scripts or tools for doing the downstream analysis, and this is what is needed. And there are many possibilities of programming language that can be used for this one, but of course it depends on the taste of the person itself. For example, myself, I prefer the Python, but the others prefer the R, but somehow to round out the skills of the bioinformatics or genomic analysis, then we have to know at least the basic science or the skills, how to use this package or different tools and so on in different languages. And I put a little bit bigger picture of bus here in the driving in the picture. So basically, as most of this scientific or the tools that being released in genomic analysis, most of them are coming in Linux distribution. So really, like, starting with Linux is the best option, of course, as you already most of you probably familiar with. So this is how sometimes, like when we chat among the PhD students, we are comparing about the progress of ourselves and about themselves, about their research and so on. So I can probably say it that this is somehow can be motivating, because let's say like I'm in the third year of my PhD and my mates or my pals, my friends who are starting mostly in the same time with me, and then they got the same funding, and I start comparing that they have maybe already published 4 papers in a top reputable journal, while mine is still like in progressing in 2 papers and so on. So it can be either motivating for me, well, it means like, oh, I can do it also, like we are starting at the same time, then I can catch up with him or her, but somehow it can also be depressing, because then maybe the situation doesn't really same, or the journals or the reviewers' comments are probably different and so on. And these are the things. So as I know that most of you have already passed this stage of PhD, so you probably know that PhD life never flat. So this is exactly what somehow can describe my first feeling in the first year of life. I was drowning in a lot of information, in a lot of literature studies, which tools are the obsolete one, which are the updated ones, and how to use them, how to parallelize them, parallelization, and then whatsoever the things, it's overdrawn. So, and then, but basically at that time, so I was like really struggling to find something to catch up. So I want to use something that I can use directly as soon as possible for my research. So at that time, I was end up into an online platform of Ux Galaxy, which they provide kind of compilation of tools for genomic analysis or transcriptomics or whatever. And this is a good thing to learn, because then we know the pipelines and so on. But the limitation is, as you probably know, this is an online platform is always limited in terms of the storage and also the computation capacity. And then meanwhile, during that time, I joined the courses for Linux and parallelization in computing cluster. So basically, I have increased my capacities to have the computational a little bit faster. But then, as I mentioned, PhD life never flats. So I thought that in the beginning, when I already have the feeling what softwares to use, what are the parameters, I thought that life would be easy, but at the end, it's not really that way. You know, like there's always might be some parameters need to be tuned in, or there is to too much data that I put in, and then like the capacity of the cluster is limited because there are a lot of users using at the same time, and these are the bottlenecks sometimes coming. And meanwhile, these bottlenecks are really out of my control, meaning like it's the admins who will fix the problems with the maintenance and so on. So meanwhile stuck, I'll always keep positive thinking. You know, like I know this is the things that I cannot do. I mean, like I have no control, so I keep doing my time. I use my time to use for another thing. So doing another literature studies, learning the programming language again, like going in deep, and so on. So meanwhile stuck also, it was a good thing to, not only meanwhile stuck, but I think during the PhD studies, what is important also to make a to-do list, like basically not really a goal that you want to do for a long period of time, but just day to day, like tomorrow or next week, what will you do? And this is really good for keeping track of what has been done within these days. And at the end of the day, it's also kind of a relief for you, or so you know that the time has passed through, but you know you've done something which is progressing for your research. And the most important thing is the progress meeting for myself, because then we can talk with the supervisors and the teams what has been I've been done, and also like reporting what's the problem and so on. And really the pat on the shoulders, it's really motivating. And what I learned from my group, thankfully I have a very nice group who are supportive. They really show a good appreciation, and I think this is really necessary. And what I heard from friends or pals, also some colleagues, this is what they need. So really for a good practice might be for the next leader of the labs and so on, maybe keep motivating your PhD student and postdoctoral researcher, and this is really helpful. So this is a slide of Austrian funding for research, so FWF. So this is somehow the scientific career if I want to take. So starting from the university students where it's been passed, and now I'm a PhD candidate, and the next step is to take a postdoctoral work for several years, 2-3 years, and then I end up with the researchers with postdoc experience and the established researchers. So basically these funding organizations, they provide grants for every steps in the scientific careers. While most of the times I know like the long goals, what should be the scientific careers in the future, but I keep only focusing on what's the requirement for the next step. So in this case, I'm focusing on the postdoctoral work, and basically what these organizations provide, they support a possibility for postdoctoral work. So they provide, it's called Erwin Schrödinger program, and this program basically supports PhDs or PhDs who wants to pursue a postdoc experience abroad. So this is the things abroad. So they want to provide the money for us as a PhD student finishing PhDs finishing in Austrian universities to go abroad and then like coming back for 6 months or 1 year. So to gain experience and bring back a new knowledge to Austrian. And after that, then there is steps and so on. So this is the bottom up, where the Erwin Schrödinger program, we can write our own proposals, our own interests of research, and finding the possible host in the international universities somewhere abroad. So apart from this one also, there is this funding also provide the researchers with postdoc experience and established researchers for their own programs. And most of the times, these funding organizations not only exist in Austria, I guess, also in Russia probably, and also in most of European countries. So let's say the young PIs, they are looking for these researchers of postdocs, and they have certain requirements for PhDs to join into the postdoc positions. And there are, of course, requirements that's needed. And what I'm focusing right now might be something related to the genomic analysis. And of course, there are some things, some skills that I didn't get during my PhD work. So let's have a look at this first advertisement of the qualifications. So the first one is the PhD in statistical genetics, bioinformatics, and so on. While I'm really fit into this one, and then the solid background in quantitative programming and so on, might be also check because I'm pretty doing this kind of analysis and programming. And then in addition, fluent in English, both speaking and writing is required. This is the things might be I should improve. Therefore, when I got the invitation from the organizer to give a talk in this conference, I took the chance because this is kind of a training for me. So not speaking about my research things, but somehow what kind of things that I can contribute, or I felt that can contribute for the good practice of laboratories. And this is why I took the chance. And then you should be able to work across different projects and to cooperate well with different project groups and so on. So maybe these are also the things. And another advertisements, let's say it's a PhD in biological and computational area. Okay, probably. And then like programming experience and R Python also check. But the thing might be for these positions, I'm not an expert in microbiome analysis, so I have to really justify it why I'm perhaps suitable for these postdoc positions. And also maybe this experience in deep learning, which is, I'm still in the beginning phase, so I need to build on these skills. So these are mostly the challenge of the PhD students, you know, like we have works to do basically based on our contracts of the PhD projects that we have. On the other hand, also we need some skills to build on. And then like this is really time consuming, but somehow this is we need to have a balanced life. And this is what I learned from Austrian people mostly, like they have their own activities outside of the work basically. So life is a balance. We need to have friends, we need to hang out together with them, and then also like keeping health, doing kind of exercise and so on. And then like talking with the families and also like doing the career and so on. So life balance is the key, and just not to be burdened so hard by overstress and also like steam off from the routine works that we have in the labs. So, and also doing some kind of arts or whatever the extracurricular that we have, maybe hiking or whatsoever, just to steam off. This is really good because then sometimes the creativity. Once I was talking in my doctoral school, we have this kind of seminars. So the seminar is held every 1 month, so once in a month. And normally during before the Corona time, it's a physical meeting, of course, and they invite a prominent professors in their field. At that time, we have professor from Technical University of München. So, and during the personal discussion between me and him, he really underlined what's needed to be a successful professor in the future. What is it? Like, he mentioned he's really loving into bike riding. And one day he got an accident, which like a bar of metal like stuck in his head, and like he got the operation for like he was in coma for 6 to 7 months, and afterwards he needs to recover for several years. And then when the doctor asked him like what do you expect after the surgery or the operation of this traumatic accidents. He said he needs the creativities. And sometimes this creativities comes from the things or it's pop-ups in our head while we are doing something apart from our routine works. So this is the thing, maybe also can be taken for a home message for you guys. So I think this is very short talk from my side. As a PhD student, I hope it's also like bring some nostalgic life for you for when you were doing the PhD students. And yeah, I think that's all. So thank you for your attention.
Maulana, thank you. Yeah, it's exactly kind of nostalgic feeling. But just let me ask you, you are foreigners, okay? I'm also lived 20 years in Japan, actually, so just half in between two countries. So how do you think the system for support PhD students in Austria compared with, probably you considered other countries as well. So how do you feel? What is a specific, peculiar, good thing about Austria systems, or something that attracted you to Austria? Something to learn from Austria, for example. So could you share some personal experience of that?
Okay, so maybe I didn't mention about my CV in the beginning. So I've been doing an exchange program first time 10 years back in Czech Republic, and then I joined, I did my master also in the University of Boku in Vienna. So basically I'm pretty familiar with Austria and how it's look like with the research and so on. And I also had an experience to do an exchange in Wageningen University in Netherlands. And so basically among these countries, I don't know whether it's good to say, but hopefully it's good, because this is my personal opinion and it's not, I hope it's not offense anybody. So basically Austria, in the terms of economic and so on, and the progress of science is very good. But somehow, it's not, as I can see, it's not that stressful as in Netherlands, for example. Because like there, what I can see, like they say, or like among Indonesian students who are studying in Netherlands, they say this is like the Japanese of European. So there are a lot of pressure, and also as the Japanese, the Far East Asian countries like the South Koreas and Japanese and so on, this also like there are more pressure or the deadlines and so on. So I think Austria is a good place where I can learn scientific for the advancement, but somehow also like having a good life. And this is also mentioned in, I think Vienna is one of the highest living standard of cities in the world, and I think this is a good places to study.
Thank you very much, and let's thank Maulana.